Thanks everyone for attending today. I know most of you didn't have a choice because we're in the middle of a session. But still, thank you very much. So this is our retrospective of 10 years of internet-related research. And you ask, how does a group of 12 people tackle such a problem? I will tell you. We make lovely graffiti walls. So our project is an attempt to encourage a conversation about some of the broader trends in internet research. So what we did is each of us were assigned a year's worth of conference data from AOIR. Our job was to strip this data of all its terrible identifiers, anonymize if you will, and to put these into a visual representation of the most frequently used words. So we collected paper titles as well as sessions titles and put it into this lovely visual representation by year. And after we had collected each year, we did a pilot content analysis to uncover the major trends and also to try and compare the differences between year to year. And we analyzed this data that we collected by looking at the major shifts in the language used between the years. So we present our findings as a graffiti wall, as crafted by our visual mastermind, Jonathan. Thank you very much. And we've selected the key moments to highlight for you and try and visually represent some of the major shifts in internet research. So I'd like to pass to Nili, who's going to walk us through this lovely map.
Okay, so we start off at 2001, and unsurprisingly, the biggest phrase used then is internet. So internet got a really big and central place. Another two interesting things is, do you remember that word? Cyberspace. It existed then. And we see very little use of the word use. But if we switch to 2002, in a minute, now we see that use really got more central. It's been used more. And the word cyberspace shrunk. We're going to say goodbye to that word in a minute because it's gone. And that's like the major things that we see at 2002. 2003 got to be very social. We see the socials is getting really, really big. And we see community also. And social is actually very big because they had many titles of articles using the word social, but it's not social networks. They're not here yet. It's more like social research. So we see titles like stories of online social or social implications of internet use in Japan, social interactions and meaning construction. So it's social, but it's not social networks yet. Okay, 2004. We have identity. Suddenly we're looking at users' identity or profiles, and that enters the scene in a major way. Jumping to 2006, we have convergence that becomes central. So we're talking about maybe technological convergence or convergence cultures. So that was main issue or big deal in 2006 conference. And if we move on to 2007, games enter the scene. That was something that we really saw just popping up. Jumping to 2009 and we get critical. So there was a session, they had a session on critical in the IR conference, and we have titles or discussions on critical internet theory, critical culture, the internet as a critical technology. We get really, really critical.
That was me. Yep.
You got critical. Okay, so we move into 2010, and now we see we start to see the social networks, and we see Twitter, as you saw, and we have Facebook, and also we have participation. That's something that Jeremy also mentioned before. So suddenly we talk about citizen participations or also deliberation, maybe. 2011, look where internet is. So no one really, well, not no one, but it's less internet. We have like the language got more diverse. So we have networks and we have internet and we have web and we have online. So the word internet is not so major, it's not so central. That's the main thing that we see in 2011 that is changing, that the word internet is just shrunk.
And even though, as Nili, as we mentioned at the beginning of the talk, we did use AOIR's conference data, but that was just intended to be sort of a creative obstruction or oblique strategy. So we're not actually, yes, they wouldn't let me use those words, but I did. And so we weren't really studying the conference. We were just using it as a way to get our juices flowing and to talk about had many discussions to talk about the changes that we've seen. So if we collected from you all the titles of your recent talks and what you've been presenting here and made a Wordle. So like I said, this isn't very good research methods because this is a much smaller sample size. So if a word is used just once or twice, it becomes gets bigger. But nevertheless, we do think that it was interesting to see how big every day has become. And again, internet is rather small. And so we think that shows that, actually at the beginning when we thought we would have to just remove internet from the Wordles because they dominated it so much. So like Nili was saying, we really have begun to see more diverse language, more precise language. Online, social, still big, but yeah, and we also invite you, again, because there's so much to explore and there's so many interesting things. Like in our conversations, we got lost for like 15 minutes talking about why engine appears so large here, or what did it mean in this context. So we invite you to go to this bit.ly and explore our Wordle for yourself.
Any comments or questions for the making of that? Yes.
There is one association that you haven't really, or correlation that you haven't really mentioned, which is the fact that each conference usually has a theme.
Yeah.
And so the Convergence theme reflects the submission. So when you have Convergence, has really been a big theme in the Brisbane conference in 2006. It's because Axel Brun shared, he really loves that kind of stuff, producer and so forth.
Yeah.
So then lots of people would use that term in order to appeal to the call for papers.
Yeah, we actually
the next
discussed
one would be
about
about game time. So then games, it becomes a... So it's a bit of a chicken and egg. We actually reckon that the actual people that write the call for papers decided that games of interest to them, and that is then a reflection of...
Right.
Well, yeah, you're definitely right, but we discussed about it a lot, and well, we think that the choice being made to have a session on that subject, it means something. It means that the subject is central. There's a lot to discuss, and that it was so big or so important that they had an entire session on it.
Right.
So we still think that.
And also that was part of the reason why Nili read the social ones, because we all assumed that social would mean something particular, but in fact, if you go look at how critical was used, it was used in a bunch of different ways that are unanticipated. So even if it was the theme, if you actually go back and read, like it provides an interesting starting place to say, like, okay, critical. What does critical mean in that context?
You'll want to go grab Ron Rice's paper, who did the work up to 2008. That you just did.
Cool.
Do you know what the other thing it'd be great to do this would be thesis titles from SDP podcasts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was like,
And just see whether it,
yeah, we were like, okay, 5 minutes we can do.
Yeah. It's a very good choice. That's fantastic.
And they're willing to let people.
So greetings, fellow SDPers, SDP alum, and people of the Oxford Internet Institute. It really is an honor and privilege to be speaking with you today. Our group is Nick, Pip, John, Jove, Tony, Daryl, and Gilad. And we've been tasked with thinking about contextual shifts in the internet research over the years. But the idea of contextual shifts is quite nebulous, so we decided to focus on key developments and advancements on and around the internet, be they technological, economic, and political. And in a lot of ways, it ties nicely with the presentation that just happened before us, because we see some of the events and developments that happened a year before they showed up really big on those Wordles. And so we also go in a sort of timeline fashion, giving us a chance to reflect on those events that have altered old or sparked new domains of concerns for internet research. We start in 2002 with the launch of the website Friendster, And in many ways, Friendster marked the beginning of what we now know as social networking, and it appears later on in research, where users not only consume online information, but they produce and actively share personal information with their friends. A year later, Linden Labs released Second Life, which apparently now even ghosts of methods past can make fun of. And around this time, 3G wireless services, the first acknowledged mobile broadband infrastructure, is launched, helping to spark interest in mobility as an area of internet research. In 2004, Google went public, leading to the launch of a range of new services, including Google Scholar, Google Books, and Gmail, that would change the landscape of information exchange online, not only for the public, but for scholars as well. And that same year, Flickr brought photo sharing to the masses, and sharing of multimedia content continues to grow throughout the decades. Also in 2004, World of Warcraft goes online, building upon a long history of multiplayer games, and the first to bring such an environment to the mainstream, and a layer of complexity to the domain of games research, which Daryl told us a lot about. And most notably, Mark Zuckerberg and others at Harvard pushed out Facebook to the members of the university at the first stages of what would become the multinational social networking institution. And in the course of making this timeline, we all started to feel old based on the developments and how long ago these things were. In 2005, Google's impact on the internet grew with the introduction of Google Maps, which until Apple's 2012 launch of iOS 6 was like the de facto mapping solution for much of the computer and the mobile web. And at the same time, GPS services are added to mobile telephones, a technological advancement that would have an impact on internet research, opening up a collection of new types of location-based personal data, while at the same time raising new concerns about privacy and surveillance. Also in 2005, YouTube launches as a major hub for people to upload user-generated video content. And it's the same year that O'Reilly publishes What is Web 2.0, and the read-write web comes to dominate the internet research agenda. 2006 saw many net innovations that expanded the landscape of internet research, including the launch of Twitter, WikiLeaks, and of course the first lolcat, which is now a major institution on the web. Hard to believe there was ever a time when posting videos of cats was funny or novel, but there it was. In 2007, iTunes University goes online, bringing ideas of online learning to a broader public. During 2008, academic scholars embraced the affordances of the online network through Mendeley. And Mendeley was an approach towards open knowledge through peer-to-peer sharing of research papers combined with online collaboration of researchers. And that same year, mobile location application Foursquare enabled users to check in to places and events and find other users around them, deepening research interests. 2010, both the iPad and Stuxnet worm were introduced, and both stealthily destroyed the productivity of scholars and researchers through innocuous means. But later on that year, political events, the Arab Spring, great political significance begins. While mainstream media places the locus of that squarely on the doorstep of social media, researchers were not so sure, and the debate continues today. Nonetheless, the use of social media and other online platforms for political discussion and participation spurs the United Nations to declare access to the internet a human right in 2011, which might also explain from the past presentation the large participation word that starts to show up around this time. I'm sure none of us can forget the bevy of events in 2013, events that pose challenges for both users and researchers of the internet. Failure by European and North American governments to respond to the growing challenges of location-based data collection led to the rise of what we now know of as big movement. During this time, internet policy researchers started to grapple with shifting privacy norms and security implications of massive data sets tracking the real-time movement of millions of people around the globe. At the same time, the United States government contracted with Facebook to create Citizen Connect, the official identification passport of the web, renewing concerns over identity, expression, and freedom of movement online. Later in 2013, a Sharia-compliant internet was launched by the governments of Egypt, Jordan, Iran, Iraq, Indonesia, Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, and Afghanistan, and Google quickly offered Shroogle. In 2015, Apple fully embraced the cloud model and stops shipping its devices with local installation of operating systems, essentially returning us all to dumb terminals. While this does have positive consequences for the accessibility and availability of documents and information for researchers, it also does raise new security concerns about research data. Google Glasses 6.0 becomes popular with the rise of sentiment networking in 2018. Considered by many to be a natural progression of social networking from the previous decades, sentiment networking is typified by the two-way transmission of emotion online. For the first time, users were not able to project their feelings onto the web, but also experience the emotions and sentiment of others. Verizon launches a very popular and successful new ad campaign asking, "Can you feel me now?" Good. The global reach and impact of sentiment networking was made explicit with the 2013 murder of adored veteran pop star Justin Bieber, as millions of users around the globe experienced the sudden and collective pain of grief, the shock of which was later estimated by researchers reached 78% of the world. And it should also be noted that a not insignificant portion of the world also experienced incredible joy and happiness. The simultaneous holographic tribute concerts following his death remain the largest spectator event in the history of the globe. In 2019, research communities struggled with the ethics of research on digital zombies, people who've died, but whose digital personas on Facebook persist. So while these races offered excellent opportunities for social research, questions about consent and intellectual property rights plague researchers and IRBs. And in the all too recent memory, the 2020 attacks of the hacker group Lolnonymous 5chan successfully knocked out internet access for 2 million cloud users for a week, a full tenth of all netizens. Within the year, cash was abolished in the United States in order to be able to better track financing to terrorist groups, in addition to causing the Venezuelan Bolivar Fuerte to become a significant underground currency in the Western Hemisphere. DOCA, the Death of Cash Act, was a tipping point for the neo-local movement. Still influential today, the LNM represents a radical break with dominant neoliberal hive mind economy precepts, encouraging bartering, local governance, and an increasingly fragmented internet center around hyperlocal and community-based services. So it's unclear what these movements will have on the next 20 years of internet research, but I think we can all agree that 2022 is a very exciting time to be researching the internet.
What's missed? What's missed? Is there anything that's been missed in the actual research?
Yeah, this started at a giant timeline. We filled a market report, as many of you have seen, in the conference room. So trying to condense it down to like an 8-minute script.
So what nearly made it in? What did you leave out that you
What ended up
would have liked it? Is there anything specific about it?
We had a very elaborate dystopian future. Hold on, I've got the. There are some things. I'm sure some of you have some pet projects or pet podcasts that we ignored.
The people would lobby for, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. iTunes University, Mobile AR. Let's see. What else? Pinterest. We saw as a major. Oh, breakthrough in solar technology, solar efficiency.
That's for the future.
Yeah, it's for the future. Let's see. Scholar. Huffington Post being significant as proof that you don't have to pay your resources. Oh yeah, the growth of OpenID to sort of change the identity management of the net. Also carbon footprint issues. Wi-Fi was quite significant actually through the first decade. Activism, crowdfunding, that's sort of an interesting break. Growing password problem.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you really did have a lot. Have we got a picture of the whiteboard actually?
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts or comments? Okay. I mean, it just leaves me to say thank you so much. I've had so much fun over the last 24 hours to get a tour through, all the great research that those of you that have been to SDP are doing at the moment, to get great insights into the slightly mad minds of this year's SU people in your legacy projects. And I just think, more than anything else, it just reminds me that we must keep doing this because, you are all utterly brilliant people and it is one of the best things we do. So I really hope we're going to be doing this maybe 5 years' time, or should we wait for another 10 years? I don't know. For a reunion. Anyway, well done. And dinner. Has everybody come to dinner, by the way? All right, okay.